Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news on the local Colorado economy and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host, Chris Gorog, brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. Chris is personable and opens up with our guests on issues we all would like to see addressed. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's New Cyber Frontier.
Welcome to today's episode of New Cyber Frontier. On today we have the former CISO of the state of California, a veteran, and now the CEO and founder of his own company, Mr. Peter Liebert. Peter, welcome today. Thanks for joining.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And we were just rolling before we recorded here, and I was like, we need to start recording because we definitely had some great dynamics going on. But Peter has been across the market in all segments. So from military, CISO for hire, worked at the state level. Now he advises counties, startups, all across the board. So Peter, kind of give us 2 or 3 minutes on your background. How you got to where you're at?
Sure. So it was not a traditional path. I have a Bachelor of Science in English from the United States Naval Academy.
Oh, awesome, man.
Now, full disclosure, I was actually looking at computer science as a major my freshman year, but the military and I were a tough fit to start. So it took me a while to I don't know. There was a lot of extracurricular activities going on at the Naval Academy, and my studies weren't the best. So I decided not to go comp sci. I went with English. It was actually a fantastic degree. I really have used it a ton since then. Obviously, it helps to be able to write decent papers and read and comprehend. So that's always a bonus.
Definitely an area where I could have used some more attention.
Fair enough. But I was always been really computer savvy. I mean, when I was a kid, my parents got a Tandy 1000. I mean, way back in the day, and I would tear that thing apart, put it back together. Of course, my parents didn't know I was doing that. So, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry if you're listening.
It doesn't work this time.
I can't figure out
come
what's
back
wrong.
Tomorrow.
Well, thankfully, this is back in the BBS days, bulletin board system days. So you had modems, and I would dial around. I would get like instructions on how to do this. And of course, you'd find other things like instructions how to hack into systems, how to do all sorts of nefarious things. And I never did anything illegal, which was good. But I certainly had a big interest in it, and I followed along pretty diligently in that area. Then I got to the academy, and then after that, I worked as a surface warfare officer, as a combat information center officer on the Navy's smallest ship.
So what years were you in the academy in the Navy?
It was 96 to 2000 was the academy, and then 2000 2008 was the Navy.
Okay.
And
so I was Navy. I don't know if we talked about that.
Oh, I saw on your profile a nuke. Yeah, I was never that smart.
91 to 97. Never that smart.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I think the smartest people didn't go nuke because I had no life. I have a block of 6 years of my life where I did nothing but sit at the bottom of a ship and watch gauges move.
Yeah, I toured a couple of reactor spaces, and anytime you have to wear a dosimeter on and have to constantly check it, I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do this as a career.
We were just out to sea all the time. We never went into port because half the countries don't have a treaty where we can pull a nuclear ship in. And some of the other ones, when we did pull in, we had to be so far out and we wouldn't shut down. So it was like, for the engineers, it was like being out to sea. We'd pull in, watch land, and everybody else would go off, and we'd stay out there operational.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
That's
anyway,
tough.
Sorry, this is about you.
No, this is I always find it fascinating chatting about this stuff. I did surface warfare for a little bit, then transferred over to logistics. When I was a supply corps officer, I really focused on integrating technology into logistics. Mm-hmm. I think I piloted the first paperless receipt system in the Navy. It was actually an aircraft carrier. And I could imagine how many storerooms were full of paper receipts. So that was...
Oh, I've seen them.
Yeah, that was entertaining to get rid of. And it worked out. So they actually adopted it, I think, after that. then I went to Philadelphia Nav ICP, worked aviation supply for a while, then went to, I was individually augmented and went to actually Israel and Palestine, West Bank. And I was there for a year, augmented, and then I actually stayed on as a contractor afterwards for 3 years, working for a defense contractor out there. And I was on the developing the national logistics system for the Palestinian security forces, which was part of the.
Okay. So there's where you finally got the security, right?
All right, part of it.
Let's take a break here. Hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today is Peter Liebert, the former CISO, State of California. And we were going through your background. We actually had to stop you for the first break because we didn't get the full thing yet. But we had just got to the point where you started transitioning from logistics supply into security by being in one of the places in the world where they needed to keep track of security the most tight over there in Palestine, Israel. So go ahead, kind of finish where your story goes from there.
Yeah, you bet. So worked on logistics infrastructure out there for a while. Really enjoyed it. Again, doing a digital system out there from it was a greenfield, which helped. And then after that, got a couple master's degrees. Went into civil service as a Navy civilian. Worked in the Pentagon for the Chief of Naval Operations. And then I transferred over to U.S. Cybercom. When I transferred over to the civilian side, it was actually after I was inspired to go full-time cybersecurity from one of my master's degrees. I had a course with Richard Clark and Eric Rosenbach, and it was a phenomenal course on cyber warfare. And I always like cheering for the underdog, especially when it's the United States of America. And I felt like we were being really bombarded, and someone had to do something. So I went into civil service. As a Chief of Naval Operations President Management Fellow, working on cybersecurity issues for the Navy, and then went over to U.S. Cybercom, where I did operational planning and policy, and then eventually wound up in the Secretary of Defense's office, working cybersecurity policy for that group. It's phenomenal years. Working in the federal government was really an awesome experience, both as a civilian and in the military. I left and at that time, I went into FireEye, which is a cybersecurity company. They had just done an IPO.
So they were kind of new back then, right?
Yeah, brand spanking new. Everyone talk of the town. Still being a fantastic company. It was under DeWalt and Kevin Mandia, and awesome company. Great group of people out there. Learned a lot. And this is where I got to see the private sector side. And I was in between CISO, or a mercenary CISO, if you will, for their managed service security product, MSSP, for about 13 companies, retail, banks, major corporations, billions and billions of dollars of revenue. So I got to see some very interesting stuff. And then after that, I went to the product side, and then I went into product development, and then went into state. Stayed as the 2.5 years as a state CISO for the state of California. So that's a long and meandering path to where I am today.
Definitely. And so when you step back and look at all those different places, you have an ability to compare some things that not very many people have experienced. What's the same? What's different? What do you see across the spectrum?
Oh man, there's a lot of really interesting correlations. So at first I would say, there are a lot of challenges that seem unique in each one of these industry verticals, but in reality they're shared. across all of them. Some that come to mind, for example, is and some of these will be oh yeah, I heard that one, but I can verify. For example, the translation of risk to non-security professionals. It is a unique issue for every industry vertical on the type of individual you're pitching it to, whether it's the board, whether it's an admiral or general, whether it's Congress or the state legislature, etc. They all have their own unique perspectives in terms of what their business requirements are, right? So your CEO is going to be requiring he's more focused on the product and the customer, and making sure that the customer doesn't feel like they should go somewhere else because they got breached or they have a whole bunch of money they have to spend to notify. On the government side, both federal and state, you have a lot of focus on service delivery, right? No profit in there, but rather, are we getting what we need out to the constituents, and are we being good custodians of their data? And that's a different set of concerns. But when you take a lot of the control frameworks, you take a lot of the issues that you see within the security environment, whether it's vulnerability and patching, threat management, identity access management, all these different components, trying to translate that up to those groups, it can be unique. And because you have to take into perspective of what their concerns are, right? Not just the aptitude of the individual that you're talking to, which you always should do, and what their background is, but trying to figure out, all right, well, how do I make an analogy here that they'll understand? So that's always been entertaining. I guess I've excelled at that, which is why I've done so well. But if I were to give a tip to folks that are in that environment, especially new CISOs, don't let the first time you're sitting with your CEO or your board or whoever your organization's leader is, be in a cybersecurity incident. If you haven't gotten in there first to talk to them and see what what makes them tick, what their interests are, and how you can relate to them, then you're in a bad situation, and it can make it worse. So get in early, talk with them, see what their concerns are, where they want to go with the organization, what do they consider critical. That's another one that's really interesting. From a perspective standpoint of each industry has their own determination of what's critical, like systems, applications, etc. And make sure you hit that, because that's going to be something that they're going to be first and foremost on their mind.
Yeah, interesting. So one thing I know, I love to do this. I teach a class on business of cybersecurity, and I'll go through 10 or 15 different industries and say, what is the top concern for cybersecurity in these different industries? And I purposely picked some that are very different so that students get to see, hey, this industry and this industry, even though they're both thinking cybersecurity is this name of securing their organization, they will spend money and care about entirely different things than this other organization does, because their industry doesn't care about the things that are most important to another industry. And that relationship is big, because like government on data security and critical infrastructure on operations, night and day difference from what are the primary concerns.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to talking to your board, talking to the people in your company that are decision makers, you have to know what is their primary concern, what they're going to spend money on, and not just tell them what you think they should, but no, what is on their list. And the business risk associated with cybersecurity, how it matches their business risk they've been doing for, they're on their business side.
Absolutely. And so as you're speaking about that, it triggered another thought. I think an easy correlation that I can point to as well is really a lot of times you'll see a lack of identifying at the top level, identifying what cybersecurity risk is there, because they are not able to do that correlation between that and business risk. So, and they might not be able to. I mean, they don't have the cybersecurity chops a lot, that we have. So one of the core things that I think CISOs should do is really do that mapping. So if you can get that business risk, and then you say, okay, well, what business processes, applications, et cetera, prop that up, and then voila, suddenly you have your critical asset list for your organization. And a lot of times you'll find when you take that to the top level folks and you say, okay, here's the 50 applications, the 20 servers, the different third-party subcontractors that we use that are considered critical. Like if they go down, we're not going to be able to do business at all.
Yeah.
It's eye-opening, and for a lot of those organizations, because where they might think, and again, most of the time it's based off of what they hear from vendors, right? So if their CEO had a brief over a steak with a vendor who's telling them, hey, don't worry about cybersecurity. All you have to do is buy this product and secure the endpoint or what have you. Then they're gonna be having that lens. But if you can open that up and say, no, you have to consider all these other aspects of it. It's not just going to be your endpoint. It has to be the network and service delivery. Yeah. We're heavily in the cloud. If you can't get to the internet to get out to the cloud because we're being DDoSed, then it doesn't matter what you have on your endpoint, right? So there's
yeah. Let's hold that thought. We're going to come back after we hear from our sponsors. Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today, we're talking to Peter Liebert. And before the break, we were talking about vendors coming in and selling you a line of something or other. Let's kind of expand on that. I know that was one of the things I had on our conversation list about, vendors. How do you know who to listen to, who to talk to, what's of value? Because everybody's coming in selling you a different bottle of snake oil, right?
Oh yeah. That's a tough question, especially in today's given marketplace. I would say that a group of CISOs got together recently at an event, and we were just kind of talking about this exact issue, and it really kind of centered on pet peeves, right? Pet peeves and things we would do if we were king for a day or queen. What would we do to change the marketplace for the better, right? So there were a couple top things that came to mind. One, all of us were in agreement, really get rid of the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, doubt. You see a lot of the vendors will, prop up their sales teams with this massive PowerPoint deck of threat and landscape and all the things that can go wrong. And here's the price per breach. And you guys are, probably compromised, and you need to do everything now. By the way, our product's the best. It's the only one you need to buy, right? So
of course,
it's probably true. A lot of the fear, uncertainty, doubt is based off statistics, but certainly it shouldn't be the focal point. Really, the focal point should be how are you developing a comprehensive strategy and capability across your organization to tackle risks. It shouldn't be about a single capability.
Yeah, you know what though? I look at once again, I have students go through an exercise of finding products that serve certain purposes, and you'll find cybersecurity products all the time, and you can't figure out what they're doing because the only thing they're selling in their whole marketing campaign is your family's going to be safe. You're going to be able to travel to work from now on. You're not going to have your identity stolen. It's all just addressing the emotional aspect of feeling safe, and then, oh yeah, by the way, there's a product in there somewhere, but we can't figure out what the heck it's doing.
Oh, it's so true. And that I see a lot of startups with this issue. Which is crazy. It's the comprehensive component of their vision in terms of what they actually provide from a value standpoint of security has to be clearly defined. And I've advised quite a few startups where they'll come in and they'll start the PowerPoint deck. And again, I say skip the threat slides. Let's go straight to your product. Let's talk about it. And they're just all over the map. We could do so much with this product. Most of this is in development, if not all of it. But we can do it all. Once we have your endpoint, our agent on your endpoint, or you have our box in your network, we'll be able to see it all and do it all. That doesn't really help from a security practitioner standpoint, nor will it from a business risk standpoint, right? You should be driving towards what specific security problem are you fixing from a use case specific scenario, versus trying to be the panacea for all things. And I see, sadly, a lot of really good security companies go down this route. I mean, if you look at some companies that really have spread themselves too thin, with they had a really flagship product in one area, and suddenly they got some money, and they make 50 acquisitions, and now all of a sudden they're a platform company that does everything moderately well or moderately bad, depending on who you talk to. It's tough, and that really doesn't do anyone any good. I mean, if anything, it's creating a worse marketplace and a worse environment, because now no one else is going to trust any of those other vendors. It's hard enough to figure out who's doing well and who's good. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why one of the most sought after resources is information security officers that have actually deployed this gear. And trying to figure out what happens, because there's always something that to learn from that type of perspective. What's the back end? How many people did it take to implement? What about the patching? Were there any conflicts? I mean, all these questions that no one would know, and the vendor usually doesn't tell you, or if they do, they'll gloss over it. So it's really important to have a good community and folks to chat with. And again, if you're a CISO or a new CISO, make sure you reach out to others and really get to know folks.
Yeah,
and that will help.
At the same time, I've seen at the CISO that is very, they know one or two things that they've done before, and they're focusing on something that might only cover a portion of their need even, but it's their pet project. It's the thing that they're kind of vested in because they know. You do what you know. And I've seen just as much, on that end, how do you get the person that has a rounded knowledge or even might accept something that they haven't seen before that might have changed since they've done, whatever it is they did in the past. So there's always that as well. I mean, how do you handle that from that end as far as even looking for someone that's a CISO, which are there's not enough people in the market to take those positions?
Oh, that's a tough question. You solve that question, you solve a lot of issues. I would say, you don't necessarily have to find a CISO that's completely well-rounded. It'll be very difficult to find them. It has taken me years and I have a very keen interest in the field. So I get great joy, honestly. I hate that you could probably see some of I'll show you some of the books, all these cybersecurity books behind me. I take great joy of reading about every new technology, how it can be implemented in the cybersecurity side. And if I feel like I don't have enough information about it, I'll pursue a certification on it, or I'll do some courses on it. I'm fortunate that there are a lot of programs out there that offer free training for veterans, like Vets in Tech and things like that. So it's a relatively low-cost option for me to take some security training. But it's taken a long time to get to that point where I feel comfortable at talking about almost any topic in security. But the most important trait that I have, and I feel that I have in this area, and I think that if you are looking for an information security officer, or you are one, is to have a keen understanding of not what you know, but rather what you don't know. And don't oversell yourself. So I think for about 2.5 years, I've been really trying to delve into the cloud space. And I finally am comfortable enough where I can tell you the difference between Amazon, Azure, et cetera, how different security products that are in there, what some strategies are, and that's critically important, especially for a lot of the newer companies and entrepreneur companies out there that are almost 100% cloud, if not all cloud. or if not mostly cloud. Doing all their DevOps up there, prod and dev. Everything is hosted. Nothing is on-prem anymore. So a lot of the old school CISOs and ISOs who are used to, hey, I got my closet of security stuff, and I got some rack space left, and what do I want to put in there? Those days are gone. I mean, if you're not up to speed on the cloud piece, then your days are numbered. But it took me a long time to kind of build that out. Mm-hmm. But until I did, I hired experts that knew it, and that's the key.
Yeah. So what do you see? I mean, as much breadth as you've had in the market, working with a lot of startups at different levels in the big organizations, what's the future look like? What trends do you see moving? I mean, you just mentioned one of them, cloud. We'll talk about that later on because I have some questions about security in there. But what do you see as the trend that if you have a checkbook to buy the best companies that you could imagine, what would they look like? What would be the next technology, the next even business, maybe even not a technology company that you would say are the game changers?
Well, I'd say the technology, not to use the buzzword bingo, but I would say the game changer right now is artificial intelligence and how it's being applied in security. So big data and artificial intelligence, the ability to really take the amount of analyst hours and time and people time and people in general to run a security program and easily reducing it by great magnitudes. If you have a good implementation of an AI-driven security tool, it's worlds better than any old school alerting system based just strictly off of threat intelligence. I can tell you right off the bat. I mean, if you look at any of these older platforms, and I say older, it's in not a negative light. I mean, they still have value. There's a lot of companies out there that run systems they've had for 5-10 years, vendors that have 5-10 years and getting value from it. That's absolutely true. But they're also probably running those systems, depending on the size, with 5 to 10 people and shifts trying to handle all the alert volume, right? Mm-hmm. So your AI-driven products out there are just game changing. I mean, you're looking at for example, there are some east-west traffic sensing platforms out there that are just phenomenal. They're based on AI. I can give you two right off the bat. It would be like Darktrace and Vectra. Mm-hmm. I think they're head-to-head. Both have some really great traits, from a comparison standpoint. But their claim to fame is they're taking all that traffic, that network traffic that's going east to west that you normally would have to sift through and try to find it, build alerts for, and they're running an AI engine through it and finding heuristically what the anomalies are and popping them up for you in an easy to understand graphical interface. I mean, wow! Immediately, your whole network can be visible from a security standpoint without having to spend so many hours tuning and trying to figure out what the hell is going on. That's a big deal. And every single element of technology from us in the security landscape is getting this boost from AI. I mean, if you look at the endpoint, the best endpoint technologies out there have AI built into the system as a core feature of the product. CrowdStrike just did their IPO a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. You saw how the stock doubled in seconds. And there's a reason behind that. They are, on the bleeding edge of how you're handling endpoint protection, because you don't have to worry about signatures. Mm-hmm. You just need to see what the activity of the endpoint's doing to block it straight off. It's a phenomenal tool. So it is definitely becoming something that every company, every organization has to start rethinking what their security strategy is and incorporating elements of artificial intelligence into it. If their product doesn't have it, what's the return on investment of maintaining what you have? Could you use the people to do other things? Yeah. Maybe you didn't kick off an identity access management program because they're all tied up doing alerts for a network. Well, there you go.
It's good to see that the AI is coming around, because I remember probably 2012 was the first time I heard companies promising that they would come up with an algorithm to solve over data problems. Dumps loads of data that nobody can handle, and they're like, we're coming up with an algorithm that's gonna help it, to solve that problem. And it's interesting to see what it's like 6 years later that we're mm-hmm. finally seeing maybe some of them come out, and some AI that can actually do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And your SIM products are all starting to incorporate it. Splunk and QRadar are looking at AI as a way to trim down the alert volume. So I mean, it's definitely coming along. I would just caution that, and anyone who has walked the floor of RSA or Black Hat can tell you this. There's a keen difference between promising to do AI and actually doing AI. So
yeah, that's what I was talking about with the companies. I heard everybody's been promising AI for so long that you quit listening to them. But it's good to see that you got some confidence in them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've deployed, a lot of these technologies, I think, and they've done phenomenally well for us in my past jobs. So I would encourage folks to put that as one of your selection criteria for anything you select, for your product. What do you have for that's considered AI? Explain it to me. How is it AI, right? Here's some gotcha questions. Do you have a data scientist on staff? Okay. If you don't, then how do you have an AI product, right? So just making sure that the company has a little, do a little due diligence.
Because everything's AI. Just put it on the market. On the paper,
exactly.
Right?
Everything was blockchain. Now it's AI, right? So,
so anyway, though, we're kind of reaching the end of our time. I wanted to give you the opportunity, though. Anything you need from our audience, put out your how you contact you, if they need to get a hold of you, do you consult, what your company offers, things like that.
Yeah, so I formed my own company. It's Liebert Security. You can find me at www.liebertsecurity.com, all one word. It's LIE, B as in boy, ERT. And hopefully you can spell security. We do consulting for any size business. We're actually focusing really on the county and small, medium-sized businesses. I felt that was an area that really was struggling to find decent consulting help in the security landscape. So we focus on those areas. We have a really interesting proprietary method of identifying a risk within your environment. We do it only within a few days through interviews and report pools. And then we get you a pretty comprehensive risk rating back that you can take to the board and or whoever your organization's leader is, and hopefully get funding and resourcing to fix the gaps. So it's pretty intuitive and easy to use. I like it. So far, the customers have liked it. So check us out at Liebert Security, and I really appreciate you guys having me on.
All right. Well, thanks for joining today.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of New Cyber Frontier. Remember to get involved. Often we think that someone else will handle privacy and security in the virtual world, but you are the only one truly in command of your virtual fate. Join our mailing list so we can keep you informed of breaking news and new releases. If you have an idea, if you have a question that you would like to hear answered, or if you want to get involved with our efforts, reach out to us at newcyberfrontier.com. We also encourage you to visit our sponsors' links, as they are the ones that really make this show possible. I want to thank each of you for supporting the show, and we look forward to seeing you back for the next episode of New Cyber Frontier.